Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidvaram Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda Madhavam. So we invoke Bhagwan's grace and Puja Gurudev's blessings to start chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita. May we go through this chapter with clarity, depth, and with utmost devotion. So with this in mind, we'll start chapter 4. I hope you have the book, this book that we're using, or the Holy Gita by Chinmaya Mission. So if you don't have your book yet, please make sure you have it or you get it in front of you. And we will go ahead and start chanting. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha.
Atha Chaturtho Adhyayaha.
Atha Chaturtho Adhyayaha.
Karma Sannyasa Yogaha.
Karma Sannyasa Yogaha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Imam Vivasvate Yogam.
Imam Vivasvate Yogam.
Proktavanaham Avyayam.
Proktavanaham Avyayam.
Vivasvan Manave Praha.
Vivaswan Manave Praha.
Manurikshvaka Vebravit.
Manurichvakave Bravit.
Together we'll chant. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Imam Vivasvate Yogam. Proktavanaham Avyayam. Vivasvan Manave Praha. Manurikshvaka Vebravit. So how does this chapter come into play? Chapter 4 is called Karma Sannyasa Yoga, which means the renunciation of action in knowledge. And this meaning will fully bloom as we go through the chapter. Chapter 1, we saw Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the yoga of Arjuna's grief, and how grief actually united Arjuna with this yearning for knowledge. He was so much in grief that he didn't know what to do. And therefore, in chapter 2, what we had was Sankhya Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, where Lord Krishna gave Arjuna the knowledge of the self, because this is the remedy. This is the remedy to remove that grief. But then Arjuna's mind wasn't prepared for this knowledge. He heard this knowledge, but to live it was a little bit challenging. So therefore, Sri Krishna gave him chapter 3, which is Karma Yoga. And after giving all of this knowledge, then how does Sri Krishna start this chapter? When knowledge is given to someone, to anyone, sometimes we don't value it. We go through a course, we attend a class, we listen, and then we just let it go. So Sri Krishna here wants to tell Arjuna that this knowledge is so incredibly valuable, and this has been handed on from time and time immemorial. So here he says, Imam. Imam means this. Imam yoga means this yoga. Yoga here means this knowledge. This knowledge, proktavan aham. Aham, that I have taught you. What happened is, I have taught it to Vivasvate, means Vivasvan, the sun devata or Surya devata. So, aham proktavan imam yogam vivasvate. I have taught this yoga to Vivaswan. Avyayam. And how is this yoga? It's imperishable. And Vivasvan manave praha. The sun god, Vivasvan, taught it to Manu. And then Manuhu Ikshvakave Abravid. Manu taught it to Ikshvaku. So what does this mean? The Blessed Lord says, I taught this imperishable yoga to Vivasvan. Vivasvan taught it to Manu, and Manu taught it to Ikshvaku. So this yoga, he says, is avyaya. It's imperishable. Why is it imperishable? Because this knowledge, once knowing it, we realize that we are that imperishable self. This is the only knowledge that really brings to us the understanding that we are immortal. We don't have to make this body immortal. We don't have to make this body live for so long. We don't have to make this mind live forever. We don't have to make this identity always alive, because we are already that. We are already immortal. We are already imperishable. We are afraid of things perishing, the body getting sick and filled with disease, and we're afraid of our minds breaking down because we are ignorant. We still identify with this notion of change, and because of that, we suffer. So this knowledge is called avyaya, navyeti pi avyaya, which means that when we really understand this knowledge, then we know that we are imperishable. We realize that. And when we realize that, we are fearless. As it is said in chapter 2, no weapons can destroy us. No sword can cut us. No wind can dry us. No water can wet us. And so this yoga is avyaya. And not only that, but this knowledge itself is eternal, because this knowledge is the breath of God. So it's always existing. Just like gravity is always existing, but when we tune into it, then we know or we discover the law of gravity. So this knowledge of the Veda is always existing. When we tune into it, we become the knower of the Veda. So this yoga is avyaya, and Bhagavan taught it to the sun. The sun god was there at the beginning of creation. And Bhagavan Surya, it's so obvious that Bhagavan Surya has this knowledge because he's the epitome of Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. And we've seen this in the Gayatri Mantra, right? This is Surya Devata, who's ever illuminating without getting tired or frustrated, without even needing any recognition. Even when the day is over and it's night for us, it's still day for Surya Bhagavan in another hemisphere, in another location. And so Bhagavan says, I have taught this to Vivasvan. And Vivasvan taught this to Manu. Now, who is Manu? In the day, one day of Brahmaji is called a kalpa. And in that kalpa, there are 14 different manus, 14 different beings. So Manu here is Vaivaswata, the son of Surya, actually, one of the Manus, the seventh Manu. So the Surya Devata taught this to Vaivaswata Manu. And this Manu taught this to Ikshvaku. Ikshvaku is the leader of the solar race from which Sri Ramachandra came. So here, Bhagavan Sri Krishna is just elaborating now how this knowledge has progressed and how this knowledge has been handed down. Now we might think, okay, this has really nothing to do with us. Why is he telling us all of this? But there is a deep implication here that Lord Krishna wants us to know. And this is found now in the second verse. Evam parampara praptam.
Evam parampara praptam.
Imam rajarshayo viduhu.
Imam rajarshayo viduhu.
Sakale neha mahata.
Sakale neha mahata.
Yogo nashtah parantapa.
Yogo nashtah parantapa.
Evam parampara praptam. Imam rajarshayo viduhu. Sakale neha mahata. Yogo nashtah parantapa. So here he says, evam. In this way, parampara praptam. This knowledge has been handed down in parampara by a lineage. And Rajarshayaha viduhu. The royal sages knew this knowledge. And that's how they ruled. Sakalena mahata yogaha nashta. Now this yoga, saha yoga, this yoga, iha, here, kalena, in the course of time, mahata, in the course of a long time, nashtaha, it became lost. O parantapa, the scorcher of foes. This knowledge handed down thus in regular succession, the royal sages. This yoga, by long lapse of time, has been lost here. O parantapa. So here, the word yoga means knowledge. So in the Bhagavad Gita, yoga will mean different things in different verses. Here it means knowledge. And specifically, this knowledge that Sri Krishna has given to Arjuna. And he says that this knowledge has been handed down through a lineage. So in our texts, Adi Shankaracharya ji says something really important. He says, Swatantriyena Shastrajnopi Brahmajnana Anveshanam na kuryat. Meaning that if one is a Shastravid, even if one is well studied, I went to Gita class, Upanishad class, I've been studying for years. Even if one is a Shastrajna, it says that Brahma Anveshana, the knowledge of Brahman, the inquiry to the knowledge of Brahman, Swatantriyena, by oneself, na kuryat, should not be done. There's a reason that this knowledge comes through a lineage, because there are so many things that we won't understand just by reading ourselves. In the Bhagavad Gita itself, as we see, yoga has so many different meanings. Atma has so many different meanings. And each verse comes in a specific context. And sometimes when we study by ourselves also, we have our own limitations. We have our own limitations, so we're not able to understand the greater depth of the meaning because our minds haven't gone there. And sometimes also, because we have likes and dislikes, we don't want to take in. We misinterpret it or take it to mean something else. One of the youth I met in this summer, she was telling me that I ask you the same question again and again, not because I don't get the answer, but because I don't like the answer. I don't like the answer because sometimes we get the answer, we get it, but we don't like it. We don't like it, so we try to change the meaning and accommodate ourselves in it. This is what we do. We accommodate our perception and our life in it, and the meaning of Shastra, what happens is it shrinks. So when you and I study by ourselves, we bring the meaning down. Whereas when we study in the parampara, they come to our level, but they take us up. Maybe in time, but they still take us to the higher meaning, higher depths of it. So it says, Swatantrena, by one's own self, na kuryat. And that's why Sri Krishna mentions this parampara. So everything, actually in our culture, in our tradition, everything was learned through parampara. Not through, now we're learning through recording and video and all of that, which is fine in some cases when we really don't have access. It's better than nothing. But the best is to learn from a teacher. So in our tradition, we had Gurukula, where we lived with the teacher, we stayed with the teacher, and we saw and we watched the teacher. And also in our scriptures, we learn that when we live with the teacher, there's a certain tuning in, which we will see, but Bhagavan himself will say. There's a tuning in between the teacher and the student that's necessary for the knowledge to actually penetrate. The teacher's heart has to speak to the student's heart. Then only the knowledge takes full bloom. Otherwise, if it doesn't, there's no transfer from heart to heart, then it just becomes information. It doesn't transform us. So he says, in thus, this knowledge is given by parampara, by a lineage, and even Rajarshaya. Rajarshaya means the Raja Rishis. So there were kings at that time who were also Rishis. Rishis doesn't only mean the seer of mantra, but Rishis means also Kranta Drishti, the ones who know this truth. So those kings who knew this truth were called Raja Rishi or Rajarshi. And so they also knew this truth, and that's how they govern society, based on this knowledge. So they knew it, and Sri Krishna is telling this because Arjuna is a Kshatriya, Arjuna is a warrior, he's a prince. And he says, but what happened in time? Sakalena mahata nashtaha. In time, this knowledge became destroyed. How did we lose this knowledge? Imagine when a student went to study the Veda, they went to study 14 spheres of knowledge. When a student went to school, they learned everything. They learned not only the 4 Vedas, they learned Gandharva Veda, Ayurveda, Dhanurveda. They learned all of these things. But in time, this knowledge has deteriorated. It has gotten lost. And why is that? Because there are several reasons. From the teacher's standpoint, some people kept the knowledge to themselves. They did not share it. They did not teach it. And they held it in such a way that they would only give it if it were paid for. Or they only would give it if they would get something in return. Whereas we know in our culture, this knowledge is Brahma Vidya. It is to be given. But some people just held it, kept it secret, didn't want to share it. It's kind of like how people don't want to share their secrets when they discover something because they want to patent it, make money off of it. So they don't want to they're not thinking about, will it be beneficial to society? They're thinking of, what will it give to me? What will I benefit from it? So some people became selfish. And so this knowledge didn't become so accessible to many. And then also there was that aspect of some people became too stringent in the way that they wanted to teach the knowledge and not sort of meet the needs of the modern being. What was taught thousands of years ago, we cannot take that same thing and teach it the same way. And that's where Puja Gurudev comes in. He took the essence of the Gita, but he taught it in a way where you and I can understand. He gave us examples which we could relate to. He wrote in a language which could speak to us. And so there are some who are so stringent that they refuse to adapt to the needs of the modern times. And what happens is that people cannot connect. They cannot relate to it. And so the knowledge gets lost. People don't come. And what else happens with the teacher is sometimes the very teachers who teach don't practice it. So when we teachers teach without practicing it, it's a turnoff. Then nobody wants to learn because they're saying, well, if it's not transforming your life, why should we learn? And why should we learn from you? So there's also this sense where people can speak, but can they really live? And so if there's some kind of difference there or dissonance, then people also don't take to the knowledge. So that's from the teacher's perspective. Now, from the student's perspective, there are also students who come, but they're anadhikari. Anadhikari means that they're not going to take it and share it or take it and practice it. They're just coming for time pass. I have nothing to do on Mondays, so I'm going to tune into the Bhagavad Gita. So then what happens is the knowledge just stops. It doesn't move. So if the students themselves don't share it or don't practice it, then the knowledge stops. If the students practice it, then the most beautiful thing is that the people at home can see it and be inspired by it. And if the students share it and practice it, that's the best thing. And that's why Puja Gurudev has given us these study groups. So after learning some texts, people have to start teaching. People have to also start teaching so that they are able to reach out to more and that we expand. So this is from the student standpoint. And the other is that students don't at all come. In some cases, students at all don't come because there is no interest in something like this. The world has become so attractive. It's become so saturated with so many things that the thirst or the interest for something as deep as this is lost. So because of all of these things, our knowledge gets lost. And over a period of time, this is what happens. And Lord Krishna says, Parantapa, O scorcher of foes, means Parantapati, the one when people see him, they get so scared. So he's telling Arjuna, if you're so brave, then you also take on this torch. Take on this torch to also pass this knowledge, share this knowledge, and practice it. So then Bhagavan Krishna, a doubt is in Arjuna's mind. Not so much a doubt, but a thought is, gosh, I'm so lucky. Arjuna's thinking, I'm so lucky because this knowledge that has been lost over time has been taught to me. Lord Krishna has given it to me. That must mean something. And so Sri Krishna tells Arjuna the reason why he gave it to Arjuna. And this is in verse number 3 now. Sa evayam maya tedya.
Sa evayam maya tebhya.
Yoga proktah puratanaha.
Yoga Prokta Puratanaha
Bhaktosi me sakha cheti
Bhaktosi me sakha cheti
rahasyam hyetaduttamam
Rahasyam hetaduttamam
sa evayam maya tedya yogah proktah puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hyetaduttamam. So he says, sa means that yoga, eva ayam, that yoga, this yoga, eva means the same yoga, that yoga which was taught, to Vivaswan, to Manu, to Ikshvaku, is this yoga, is this same yoga, maya proktaha puratanaha, and by me it has been taught to you. Maya, by me, proktaha, has been taught to you. And adya means now, today. Puratanaha, and this yoga is ancient. But why? Why did Krishna teach it to Arjuna? Bhaktaha asi, you are a devotee. You are a devotee, you are my devotee. Me, sakhacha, and you are my friend. Rahasyam hi etad uttamam. And etad, this is uttamam, the best secret. This is a supreme secret. So that same ancient yoga has been taught today to you by me, for you are my devotee and my friend. And this is a supreme secret. So one might wonder, why is it that Arjuna got this knowledge? What made him so special? So Sri Krishna says, Bhaktaha, you are a devotee. You are a devotee because you have trust, you have love, and you have respect for this knowledge. So in the same way, this knowledge, whatever I have taught, I have given to you. And also Sakha, you are as dear to me as my friend. And therefore, this rahasya, this secret, which is so supreme, secret is something that's so dear to us, and we don't share a secret to everybody, right? This knowledge is called secret because it's hard to understand. And it's not as easily available to everybody. Even if it's there, only those who really are able to tune into it get it. So he says, this is a rahasya. And therefore, I'm telling you. What this means is Arjuna made Sri Krishna very, very happy. See, when the teacher and the student are able to tune with each other, the teacher feels no barrier and is exploding to share. Just like when the cow sees the calf, her udders are exploding with milk. When a mother sees a child, she's exploding to feed the child, to give the child everything. So when the student shows himself or herself to surrender deeply and to be this empty vessel to receive, the teacher is so incredibly happy and just gives everything that they have. Otherwise, if the student's not ready, then the teacher will give just a little bit, just a tad bit. When we went to Uttarkashi, this was years ago, we had gone for Bhiksha. And we had gone to another ashram for Bhiksha. So we went with our, a Bhiksha Patra. And we went to one Swamiji and we sat with him and we asked him some question. And then he tells us in the end, he says, you came with this much Patra and so you got this much food. Right now, your mind has that much, and so that much only you can take. This is what he told us. And then we left. And we understood that even if a teacher knows so much, if the capacity of the student is this much, if the interest of the student is this much, then the teacher will only give that much. right? Those who are teachers in school or in other places, you can see when the kids need a break, then you're going to stop teaching. You're going to stop teaching, and then you're going to tell a story, tell a joke, make them move around. Even if you have so much to share, you won't share it. Huh? You'll only give that which they can take. But when the student is just so empty and ready to receive, and they can take everything, then the teacher is so happy that they just pour everything out. And this is what happened to Sri Krishna. So he says, I have taught this to you because you've surrendered. And not only that, but Arjuna listens. He listens and he asks deep questions. And so that is why he was taught this knowledge. The same thing with Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Swami Vivekananda. When the two of them met, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was so incredibly happy because in Swami Vivekananda was Narendra at that time. He saw a fit vessel, somebody that he could pour everything to. Teachers also long. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to scream and yell for people to come to him. And it was years before he got these students. So even teachers long for such students. So Sri Krishna was so happy to have Arjuna. Now, what happens? Now, here, Arjuna has a doubt. Arjuna has a doubt. How is it that Sri Krishna had given this knowledge to the sun? And so this is where Arjuna comes in. Now we're in verse number 4. Arjuna uvacha.
Arjuna uvacha.
Aparam bhavato janma.
Aparam bhavato janma.
Param janma vivasvataha.
Param janma vivasvataha.
Kathametad vijaniyam.
Kathametad vijaniyam.
Svamadau proktavaniti.
Tvamadau proktavaniti.
Arjuna uvacha. Aparam bhavato janma. Param janma vivasvataha. Kathametad vijaniyam. Tvamadau proktavaniti. So Arjuna vacha. Arjuna says, Aparam bhavataha janma. Bhavataha janma. Your birth, aparam. Aparam means later. Param janma vivasvataha. Param janma vivasvataha. The Surya Devata's janma, birth, is param, is prior. Kathametad vijaniyam. How am I able to understand? Tvam adau, you in the beginning, proktavan, you taught this in the beginning. Arjuna said, later was your birth, and prior was the birth of Vivasvan, the sun. How am I to understand that you taught this yoga in the beginning? So here Arjuna is now looking at Sri Krishna. Looking at Sri Krishna as an embodied being. Now, Sri Krishna and Arjuna are at around the same age. They're around maybe in their 70s, 80s in the Mahabharata war, right? They're in this around the same age. And he's thinking that in this body, in this embodiment, how did you give this knowledge to Surya, Vivaswan, Surya, at the beginning of creation? How is that possible? In this embodiment. If you say it was not in this embodiment, if you say maybe in another embodiment, in another body, you gave this knowledge to the sun, then how is it that you remember it? Because we know we don't remember our past lives, right? We don't remember our past lives. So how is it that you remember it? And Arjuna is also wondering, if you gave this knowledge to Surya Devata is Aditya, resplendent, bright, brilliant. And if you were the teacher of Surya, then what must you be? You must be Parameshwara. You must be that ultimate truth. And if you are that Parameshwara, if you are that ultimate truth, then how are you in this body? Because that ultimate truth is pure awareness, pure being, pure consciousness. So how are you in this body? So all these doubts come to Arjuna's mind. He's not able to connect. How is it that Sri Krishna gave this knowledge in this body? If he had another body, then how does he remember? Because we don't remember anything. And if he did, then he must be God, Parameshwara, because he's teaching Surya. So he must be all resplendent. But if he has that, then how did he take this form? So he had so many questions in his mind. And so Bhagavan says, okay, now it's time for me to explain the Rahasya of Avatara. Rahasya means secret. Bhagavan has explained the secret of the knowledge, secret of Sankhya Yoga, secret of Karma Yoga. Sankhya Yoga in chapter 2, secret of Karma Yoga in chapter 3. But now the topic that's being introduced is Avatara. Avatara. And so this is how Bhagavan introduces the topic. So we will see now verse number 5. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Sri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Bahuni me vyatitani.
Bahuni me vyatitani.
Janmani tava charjuna.
Janmani tava charjuna.
Tanyaham veda sarvani.
Tanyaham veda sarvani.
Natvam veta parantapa.
Natvam veda parantapa.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Bahuni me vyatitani. Janmani tava charjuna. Tanyaham veda sarvani. Natvam veda parantapa. So what happens here? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Now Bhagavan starts to speak. Bahuni me vyatitani. Bahuni means many of my vyatitani janmani. Vyatitani have passed away. Janmani. Many of my births have passed. Tavacha. And Tavacha, yours also, Arjuna. Many of my births have passed. Many of your births have passed. Tani aham. Those aham, I, Veda. I know. Sarvani, I know all of them. Natvam, but not you. Veda. You don't know. Parantapa. So the blessed Lord said, many births of mine have passed as well as yours, O Arjuna. I know them all, but you know them not. O Parantapa, the scorcher of foes. Now, in this verse, I want you to just reflect on these two words before we go into it. Bahuni Janmani. Bahuni means many, Janmani, births. How many births have we had? Now just think, this summer, you and I would have traveled somewhere. We might have gone to Bharat or another place. Just how much does it take to travel? To get to the airport, an hour, to check in and wait 2 hours, to take a flight, maybe 6-7 hours, and then you have a layover for 3-4 hours, and then another flight for like another 10 hours. And then you get there, but it's so traffic, you take another 1 hour to get to your destination. And finally, after about 30 or 40 hours, you reach from one place to another and you're exhausted. exhausted so much that you're like, I just want to stay here for some time because it has taken me 30 to 40 hours just to get here. It's taken me so much time, so much effort. Maybe we've had to take off work. Maybe we've had to finish a lot of things before we left. We've had to deal with a lot of things. We've put so much effort to take this trip, which was so incredibly long. And now that we're there, we just want to be there, right? Now, if we feel that way for a trip, just imagine how we feel, what we should feel about this life. Do you know how many births it has taken you and me to be where we are? This is not one human birth. You and I would have gone through thousands of births, thousands of births. We would have gone through an animal, a plant, a human being, so many different things, because this knowledge of scriptures doesn't come in one birth. It has taken us so much to actually reach here. Bahuni Janmani. And when we realize how much it's taken us to reach here, we squander it away. Not only our efforts, it has taken the efforts of those around us. Even in this life you take, how many people have nurtured our growth, have cared for us, have done so much so you and I can be here and pursue this truth? How many? We cannot even count. We cannot even remember. And yet sometimes a thought comes that we should give this up. We should stop this. We should just be lazy. We should just not do anything. We should just waste our life in mere pursuit of pleasure. Still, we have these thoughts because we don't realize how much it has taken us to come here. This life is a blessing. It's a blessing, and don't squander it away. Shri Krishna is also telling Arjuna, listen to what you have here. It is the most precious gift. Many lives have passed, and it is this life where you're getting this knowledge to break free. So do it. Bahuni Janmani. These many lives of yours have passed. Many of my lives have also passed. What is the difference? Shri Krishna says, I remember all of my lives. Because he's Bhagavan. He's Bhagavan. Who is Bhagavan? Bhagavan is the one who has everything in full measure. Aishwarya, Shri, Aishwarya, glory, Shri, fame, Yashaha. They have dharma, moksha, vairagya. Bhagavan is the one who has everything in full measure. And so Bhagavan is all-knowing, is able to remember. But we are not able to remember. We do not have memories of our past births, but what we have is that samskara. Samskara. Samskara means we have these impressions. The samskara of knowledge is very, very precious and very rare. So Bhagavan knows everything. We don't know. We don't have that actual memory, but we have impressions. So we will see that sometimes when babies are born, some of them are just so in tune with music. Some of them are just so in tune with a certain language. Some of them are just so in tune with a certain environment. It's because of those samskaras. Now people ask this question, now how come we don't remember? How come we don't remember? The answer is, even if we remembered, we would forget. Because do you all remember what you ate 3-4 days ago for breakfast? No, we don't remember. So even if we did remember, we would forget. And the other reason is the purpose of life is not to keep living in the past or keep seeking the past. The purpose of life is to go beyond time. So Bhagavan only gives us exactly what's necessary. Whatever we need in our life is what we get. If we don't get something, it's because we don't need it. And that's just the way the world works. So Bahuni Janmani, it has taken us so many births to come here. Think about that. Just think about that. Think of all the sacrifices that so many people made for you and I to come here. And knowing this, don't squander it away. You may not remember your births, but Bhagavan says, I remember everything. Because after all, he is Bhagavan. But now, Arjuna says, how did this happen? How is Bhagavan coming, taking birth here? So before we go into this, I just want to read something that Puja Gurudev has in his commentary. This is on page 10 of this book. If you have this book, I'm on page 10. It says here, each embodied life indicates a long autobiography of that ego. And it is only after a long chain of existence in different forms that it has at least reached its present destination. So just think about what it took for you and I to reach here. In each life, as soon as the ego expresses itself in its given field of activity, fortunately, it forgets the entire past and carries with it only a distinct flavor, vasana, thereof. So this is what he says. Now, Arjuna is now a little bit, again, now his mind is wondering, how is it that that birthless, pure awareness has taken form here? How did that happen? So this portion now is the Avatara Siddhanta. So this Avatara Siddhanta is a specialty of the 4th chapter. Now we will just touch upon verse 6. Whatever we can cover, we'll cover. But this is a very, very beautiful portion, how Bhagavan explains how he comes into this world. So let us read this. Verse number 6. Ajopi sannavyayatma.
Ajopi sannavyayatma.
Bhutanamishwaropi san.
Bhutanamishwaropi san.
Prakritim swamadhisthaya.
Prakritim swamadhisthaya.
Sambhavamyatma mayaya.
Sambhavamyatma mayaya.
Yes, Maya has come. Okay, we'll chant together. Ajopi sannavyayatma. Bhutanamishwaropi san. Prakritim swamadhishtaya. Sambhavamyatma mayaya. So what is he saying here? So the question is, how can the Lord take birth here? How does Bhagavan take birth here? Ajaha api. Ajaha. Truly, the Lord is unborn. Bhagavan is unborn. Ajaha api, being unborn, and avyayatma, of imperishable nature, pure awareness. Still, bhutanam ishwaraha api. Though I am the Ishwara, I am the Lord bhutanam, of all the beings, Son, I am the Lord of all beings, yet prakritim swamadhisthaya. Swamadhisthaya means I rule over my own prakriti, my own nature, my own maya. Sambhavami, I come into being, Atma Mayaya, by my own Maya. By my own Maya, I come into being. Though I am unborn and am of imperishable nature, and though I am the Lord of all beings, yet ruling over my nature, I take birth by my own Maya. So what does this mean? So first, let's look at this word, ajaha. Ajaha, unborn. Unborn means that pure awareness, consciousness is never born. Pure awareness, consciousness can never be born. It has no birth. It has no death. So it's called ajaha. Huh? That's why we have ajatavada. Jatavada means there was never any birth. There was never any creation or destruction. Ajaha. And avyaya. Obviously, because there is no birth, then there is no modification. There is no perishing. Because there is no birth of that pure consciousness, there is no perishing. Now, not only in Ishvara's case, but also in Jiva's case. The Jiva, if you really think about it deeply, was never born. Nakaschit jayate jivaha. In Mandukya Upanishad, it says that there was never any jiva. Jiva means individuality. There's actually no jiva. This jiva is a notion. It's a notion that when we identify with the body, I am the body. When we identify with the mind, I am the mind. When we identify with the ego, I am the ego. That notion of identification, that is called jiva. That there was never any jiva. It's this false notion of identification with the limited, that's the jiva. So even for the jiva, even the jiva is unborn. For that pure awareness and consciousness, Bhagavan is unborn, but even the jiva is unborn. Bhagavan is imperishable. Even the jiva is imperishable. Even you and I, right here and right now, are imperishable. Then what's the difference between God and man? What's the difference between God coming to this world and us coming into this world? That we will see next week. Okay? I can't start now because I won't stop. So I won't start that now. But what I will do now is I will just summarize now verses 1 to 5. 1 to 5. Where are we in the Bhagavad Gita? We've seen that we are in chapter 4. Chapter 4 is that Karma Sannyasa Yoga, the renunciation of action in knowledge. How does this chapter start? This chapter starts with Bhagavan Shri Krishna saying, I gave you knowledge, Sankhya Yoga, and action, Karma Yoga. I gave you the knowledge of these two, but I want you to really see the value of it. And so I have this knowledge is eternal, it's imperishable. I have passed it on to the sun god, who's passed it on to Manu, to Ikshvaku. And this knowledge is to be given in parampara, in a lineage, from teacher to student, and not to be understood with our own limited interpretation. And so this is how it has come. But over time, this knowledge has been lost. And due to many reasons we saw, the shortcomings of the teacher, the shortcomings of the student, and it has been lost over time. Not only this knowledge, but we will see also certain languages have been lost. Cultural practices have been lost because we don't live up to them. We don't practice them. We don't share them. And so all of this has been lost, Arjuna. And even the great kings, they knew it. So many people knew it, but it had been lost. But in verse number 3, we saw that I have taught this to you. I have taught this to you. And so Sri Krishna says, I have taught it to you because you are a bhakta, you are a devotee, and you are sadhana, you are my friend. And in you, Arjuna, I find such a fit student. When the student's interested, when the student is emptied of their likes and dislikes, when the student is enthusiastic, when the teacher just flows. So I have taught this to you, and this is the supreme secret, because this gives us the secret to liberation. Then Arjuna says, I have a question for you. How is it that you taught this knowledge to Surya Devata or Surya Bhagavan when you came after him? I can't put these two things together. Who are you really? How does that formless consciousness awareness come into being? You must be that because you taught this knowledge to somebody like Surya. And so Bhagavan says, listen, this is not my first birth. There are many, many births that you've had and I've had. Many, many births we've gone through. The only difference is that you don't remember your births, but I remember them. But then Arjuna says, but still, how did you come to being? And so Bhagavan replies in brief, it is through my own Maya, through my own power. Now, how exactly through his Maya, that we will see next week. Okay? So for now, I will say the closing prayer. I'll just make a few announcements and then we'll have a question and answer for those who have questions. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Okay. Now, one important thing I want to tell you is how should we study the Bhagavad Gita? Now, after this class, make sure everybody makes their notes, not rough notes, huh? 2 sets of notes. So one, maybe you're scribbling during class, that's okay, but clear sets of notes and keep it with you so that you can keep thinking over it and thinking over it. And then if there are any doubts or clarifications, you can bring them to class. But please make sure you have this so that now a lot of you have been studying for a long time. So keep a book, keep a notebook, but look at it and write clearly. Make sure you can read your own handwriting and then reflect upon it so that you can flow with this teaching throughout the week. This week, the 2 words I just want you to keep in mind are Bahuni Janmani, many births. Reflect on how many births it has taken for you and I to come here. Just keep thinking about that. Okay? All right.